Hello everyone. Welcome back to the Console Corner Show. Week 2 of the PCL just ended, and they showed all 8 sets on the Mixer stream, so that was awesome. Shout out to Hi-Res and Skillshot Media and the casters who had to endure that long day. That was awesome. So there's that. I did a quick recap of the scores of the set scores for every match on a YouTube video that I uploaded yesterday. But if you haven't watched that, we can quickly go over it. Radiant versus, in the Xbox side of things, Radiant versus OTP, 2-1 in favor of Radiant. Vexed versus Zimmerframe, 2-0 in the favor of Vexed. Kirsty's Hands and Happy Battle Cats went to a 3-game set. Kirsty's Hands came out on top 2-1. Onslaught versus the Baldy Bunch, and Onslaught 2-0 the Baldy Bunch. And then on the PS4 side of things, Cyclone beat BrutalFissure 2-1. Flashpoint over YCTG 2-0. Elevate over Game Over 2-0. And Oni Channers over Warm Up 2-0. So that was a quick little fast lightning recap. So the first thing I want to talk about today is Titoo from Cyclone. I think so. The Rain didn't play for Cyclone this weekend. They had It's Titoo playing, and I think that was a big move for them. For the longest time now, Cyclone has been that number 2 team behind Flashpoint. Then they went up against Flashpoint, and they lost 2-1 in the group stages against them. They qualified still for the league, and then they went up against Flashpoint in the first week of the PCL. And that first match was so close on Stone Keep. It was 4-3 in favor of Flashpoint, but it was a very long match, and it showed promise for Cyclone at the moment. Then they got steamrolled the second game, and they lost the entire set 2-0. So it looks as if they weren't as strong. Before the week 2 games, I didn't know what options Cyclone was going to look at to increase their competitiveness towards Flashpoint, maybe even knock off Flashpoint. I think they found what they were looking for by replacing the Rain with It's Titoo. I think Titoo is a very good player. Titoo was on the team before. That team, he wasn't surrounded by players of the Cyclone caliber. Titoo was on the YCTG roster as a sub when they beat Flashpoint in that first week of qualifiers in the open brackets. So he has experience against Flashpoint. He has experience at beating Flashpoint. And now here he is being placed into a lineup that is the second best team in EU, the team that everyone thinks is going to give Flashpoint a run for their money if they play well enough. And now he's in that lineup. So I think that's a big move for Cyclone, especially the way he played on Monday on stream. He was spectacular. He played the Drogos, and he was spectacular on the Drogos. And I think that he is a better Drogos than the Rain from what I've seen on the streams that Cyclone has been on. But the more important thing that I think really comes down to it when Titoo is in that lineup with Cyclone is that it relieves pressure off of Don Canola or Donka. I think with the Rain in there, the Rain can't play the hit scans like Leanne, Vivian. He can't, or Victor. He can't play those as well as Donka can. So Donka's usually the one playing those, and the Rain is left with the blasters and a couple flanks here and there. And it really limited their drafting because they had to draft a blaster for the Rain. He was a great blaster, but they had to draft that blaster. He wasn't able to flex as well to the hit scans as It's Titoo can. And with It's Titoo being able to relieve that pressure off of Donka because he played the Vivian in one of the games. So Donka doesn't have to play that Vivian. Donka can play his flanks and just do him now because he knows that in the draft, they are not forced to draft a particular draft for the Rain to fit into the composition because now they have Titoo. He can play those blasters and he can flex to the hit scans and maybe even a few flanks. So it relieves some pressure from Donka and it creates a situation where Cyclone can open up the possibilities to their drafting and they can just go wild. Another thing I want to talk about is BrutalFissure. BrutalFissure is really moving up in the ranks as a team and as individual players. I will tell you this. The most underrated player in the EU scene on PS4 right now is Cultura Skred. That man, he's really good. He frags out. He does his job well. He plays his role very well. And he's always high in the damage and the kill charts. The problem is that he has had a lot of pressure riding on his shoulders. Even when they had Itik on their team, who left to play for Cyclone. Now that pressure is kind of relieved. When they lost Itik and Itik went to Cyclone and he's playing their frontline with Centurio and he flexes to damage when they need him to. He played damage on BrutalFissure, which at the time was called Itek, and it put a lot of pressure. And I don't know why it did, but Cultura had to just play out of his mind every time to keep that team in contention. And now they don't need to because they've picked up a young fragger that was a ranked god. And now he leads the league in kills and damage per game. And that's Atomic AMK. Atomic AMK is most notably known for his Bomb King. And he played it, I think, twice. He played it once against Cyclone, but he's absolutely insane on it. He did play Drogos, and his Drogos impressed me a lot. I think he only missed about 15, 20 rockets that game, and that I think was a 4-3 game that they won. So that's a long game. You're gonna shoot. That's a lot of rockets being shot out of a Drogos weapon, and he only missed about 15 or 20 that I counted. And it could have been less than that. But he really impressed me on the Drogos, and he already impresses me on his Bomb King. The man is going insane in the league right now. Granted, they've gone up against YCTG, and they've played a 3-game set against Cyclone. And next week, they face Flashpoint. So that will really test this team to where they are right now with Atomic AMK in their lineup, with Cultura being able to relax and play his role very well instead of trying to do too much in the lineup now. We saw a lot of team compositions and a lot of weird drafts. I know we saw a couple Ruckuses. We saw a few Pips. I think we saw Tyra's. And Tyra's getting better in the meta now that she has 2 hunting marks. That's 25% increased damage on each mark. And it has an automatic 2-second, automatically 2 seconds reduced on the cooldown without Chronos and without the card in the loadout. So that's a very strong talent right now for Tyra. It's making her very, very useful in team fights as well. But I want to talk about Grok and Terminus. And we know Terminus is banned because he still has a few bugs that need to be worked out. And I don't think Terminus being banned is that big of a play. Really, the only big factor that is missing from a Terminus being played is the ultimate. Being able to keep team fights going, being able to contest the payload even longer. So we all know that's a big deal with Terminus, but I don't really see much being missed from him not being in the champs available to play. What I do think is having a big impact on the scene right now is the Grok bans. I know a lot of teams would like to run Grok, maybe even Elevate. They have the best Grok player in the world on console with Shu. We've seen some PS4 EU teams whip out Grok before. We've seen some Xbox teams on the NA side of things whip out Grok as well. So it's interesting to see if Grok is being able to be put back into play. It'll be interesting to see if Grok will come back into play before this season ends and see who has been practicing with him already, who is ready to play him in a draft. And I want to see how strong Grok will be because he has a different ultimate now. He can fly, increase duration of that ultimate. And he has now what I always said he is needed. And that, you know, the reason why Grok was so good before his hard nerf was because he was able to heal so much. When they took that away, I said Grok could still be a very viable healer. The problem with him is that he only has one way to heal you, and that's with a totem with an AoE or not, yeah, an AoE heal. So it was very difficult for you to be able to keep him in the meta when that is the case, because you know, you look at all the other healers in the game, they can heal you from a longer distance than Grok can. And with that being said, now Grok can place his totem at distances instead of having to put himself out of position to heal you, or maybe having someone else put themselves out of position to get to Grok. So I thought that really made a difference with Grok. He also has the talent where he can heal you with his weapon. I don't really think that card will be as viable. I still think the CC Totem, and if you run double support, then Maelstrom, will be the best two legendaries or talent cards for Grok at the moment. But I don't think the healing with the shooting you one is gonna. I don't think the Ana Grok is gonna work. Nor do I think the Ana Pip is going to work either. The last thing that is banned that I know of right now that is something to do with champions and talents and stuff like that, and not skins or anything, is Shrapnel, Victor's talent card. It was very interesting too, because I was thinking before the stream happened on Monday, I said, okay, there's no Shrapnel, so these people are picking Victor. What are they going to run? Are they going to run Gunnery? Because now Gunnery is different. You get, I still believe you get that damage boost, but you shoot in a 3-round burst mode. So I guess if you can't really aim as well with it being fully automatic, then it'll be a little harder for you to do it with the burst mode. So that was one thing I thought of. We did see majority of the Victor players on stream in the league were playing with that 3 burst mode card. Nobody was playing with cardio because that's insane. Cardio can work out, but I don't think it'll work out in the league, especially with Cauterize being such a big item. But we did see one team running a Hipfire Victor. I believe it was Bishop on Kirsty's hands. I think he was running the... I believe it was him. I can't remember off the top of my head. I didn't write it down. I should have written it down. But I believe it was Bishop on Kirsty's hands running the Hipfire Victor, which was interesting to see. So that was pretty cool to be able to spectate him and watch how he plays Victor with Shrapnel being banned. The reason, if none of you know why, or if some of you don't know why Shrapnel is banned, it's because Shrapnel's talent increases your radius of your grenade by 40%. And that still works, but the problem is that the grenade indicator does not show the increased radius. So you could be out of the indicator, but you're still within that 40% increase. So you're still getting hit by it, and you're like, what the heck, you know? So that is the reason for that card being banned. I believe if Shrapnel comes back into play, we'll see a lot of Victor play, a lot more Victor play than what we are seeing right now. I think Victor right now, not because of his burst mode, and a little bit because of other champions' nerfs and buffs, he is creeping back into the meta. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's great, but I think he's good. He's a good hit scan. I think Tyra's up there with him as well because of the hunting party talent now. And I think Vivian is still good, especially to deal with flanks. But and so is Leanne. I truly think Leanne... To me, Leanne and Vivian are the best hit scans to deal with flanks. You know, Leanne has those auto-aim abilities. She has death and taxes, so she can also put the wrecker on the front lines. And the same thing with Vivian. She has that personal shield. She can have automatic nimble 3. Her ultimate is super strong at melting flanks. And she has a drone, so a sensor drone. She can, find people or she can reveal them. And she can put a lot of damage on tanks as well with that Sapper Rounds card. And even Opportunity and Chaos. We saw one of those this weekend as well from Happy Battle Cats. I remember because there were no shields on the side of Kirsty's hands. That was the match that Happy Battle Cats won. And going to that, just real quick, I think Happy Battle Cats, I don't think they're the worst team in the league. A lot of people are giving them a lot of slack saying, oh, they're a bunch of ranked kids. They're not even good. We 4-0 them in scrims. Hey, first of all, scrims don't matter. And second of all, maybe they're trying something, Maybe they are a bunch of ranked kids, but they've come together. They've formed a team. They made the league, and now they're grinding to get better as a team in the league. And if they're trying something new in scrims and getting rolled, then they're learning something from that. And I really think Happy Battle Cats won the draft in their second match against Kirsty's Hands, which was the one that they won and forced that game 3, and they played it on Bright Marsh. They picked 5 champions, of course, just like any other game, but 4 of those champions were able to have shields or give shields. They had a lot of shielding that game, and Kirsty's Hands responded with 2 wreckers, but they didn't really have the best wreckers in the game. So Happy Battle Cats had a Vivian. That's a lot of damage. That's a lot of pressure, and she has her shield. They had a Torvald. That is just bubbles right there on all the teammates when they need them. That's a lot of shielding in itself. He also has his self-shield. You also have a Fernando that they had. That's a lot of shielding as well with the Immortal even. And then they had a Furia, and that Furia was running the card in her loadout where she puts personal shields on the people she heals as well. So I think the shielding really helped them win that game there. So those... I want to see what other teams can come up with, and I'm waiting for these banned champs to come back into play, as well as the Shrapnel card. Yes, a lot of people have been asking me about the top plays as well. The top plays videos will be on YouTube every week on Tuesdays. We have settled on Tuesdays. Mondays, we have the power rankings. Tuesdays, we'll have the top plays. Wednesdays, I'm thinking about doing the weekly recap like we did yesterday with the YouTube video I put up yesterday. So we'll have a quick weekly recap. I know a lot of people can't catch the Console Corner show. I know a lot of people don't want to sit through the YouTube VOD of it as well. And that's fine. I mean, I hope everyone loves watching my content. But if you don't want to watch this long video, that's fine. I'm working on putting timestamps in as well, I got a lot of things on my mind, and sometimes I forget things, so I will get to those. Thursday, we have the live show, and then Fridays, we have the podcast. And this week's podcast, by the way, that drops tomorrow on YouTube, is the best podcast so far. There's been 5 of them on YouTube so far, and this 6th one is the best podcast there is. I don't like to spoil who I have on the show, but you're going to love these 2 guys. They're hilarious. And they actually made a $10 bet against each other. And I will get to that when I go over what they bet against. So the top plays video. Do not send me links in my Twitter DMs. Do not tweet them to me. Do not email them to me. Do not send them to me on Discord. Do not send them to me on PlayStation. Do not send them to me on Xbox. Do not send them to me any other way except for in the Google link, the Google form, the link to the Google form. That is the only way I'm accepting links or submissions for top plays. The reason is because you need to fill out all the information on there. There's 4 or 5 questions on there. I need you to fill it out. Those questions are, the answers are required. So I need you to do that. And then it goes straight to my Google Drive. Okay, and I am not the only person that looks at those plays or those forums. So if you send it to me in Discord or Twitter or email or anything else, I will forget about it. I will open it, look at it, and then forget about it. Especially if I'm not home and I see it on my phone, or I think you're DMing me on Twitter for something important or something else, and I look at it, once I open it, it's not going to say it's unread ever again, so I will forget about it, okay? Do not do that. I will forget about it. And I'm not the only person that looks at those forums. I have another person who looks at those forums, and he's the person who actually puts the video together. He draws 5 out of there. He sends them to me, and I say, okay, I want this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and I want these in this order. This is play number 5. This is play number 4. This is play number 3, 2, and 1. And then he puts them in the video. He sends me the video. I record the audio over it, and then we drop the video. That is how this is going to work. So do not send me these in my Twitter DMs. I'm serious. I will forget. And then when you come crying to me because your play wasn't even considered, that's what happens. Now, even if you don't think your play is going to make top plays, you still should send it in. Okay? It's not all about pentakills. It's not all about quadra kills. There can be triple kills. There can be double kills. There can be single kills in there. If it's tactical, if it's smart, even if it's not a kill at all. Like on the stream when the Xbox match was happening and Goremizer and Pretty Hair went crazy for that play where they were trying to zone them out on Frog Isle, and Anara on her horse jumped over Makoa and made it to point, stalled point, created space, and they eventually capped the point. That could be in top plays because that was a monumental play in that game. That shifted the whole outcome of that game. It shifted the whole timeline. It shifted the whole everything. That could be a top play. So it's not just singles, double. It's not just pentas and quadras. I don't care if you get 1,000,000 kills in one game. If it's boring, it's boring. So send me it, okay? Don't be too hard on yourself about your own play. If you clip it and you want to send it in, send it in. Let me be the judge, okay? I will be critical. If it's boring, I'll tell you it's straight up boring. Yeah. All right, so there's some. Let's go over the power rankings real quickly, and then we'll get to next week's games or next week's sets and a little bit of predictions. We'll talk a little bit more about some other stuff. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so in the power rankings, Elevate, of course, is still the #1 team. However, they haven't really had a tough schedule. They've gone up against Warm Up and Game Over, and I think those two teams are the worst teams in the league right now. But they're going up against Oni Chainers. They're going up against Elevate. I think those are two of the best teams in the league right now. So, you know, week 3, Game Over is facing Warm Up. They're facing each other, so they can kind of see who is the 3rd place team in that division right now. Flashpoint is still strong. They went up against YCTG, 2-0'd them. 4-1 both times, I think. So pretty easy set for them. Vex Gaming, Onslaught moving up. They 2-0'd Baldy Bunch. That was a big thing for me. Wonderful played spectacular on the Saris in game 1. Then Baldy Bunch actually banned the Saris. So Wonderful was able to play Koga in game 2, which Koga went 4th in the draft. That was interesting in itself. So I liked seeing that. Just trying to give a quick rundown right here. Yeah, so after 2 weeks of play, 3 games of Saris, Wonderful is at 257,000 damage so far this season, which in retrospect is not a lot of damage, but when you really think about it, that is a ton of damage for a Saris in only 3 games, and as quickly as they win. So he did really well in the Koga in game 2 as well. Game 3, they had a Coolman and Skeppy were on the Strix in Tyra. Or I'm sorry, game 2. It was also game 2. They only played 2 games. So Wonderful was on that Koga, and he was diving their backline. But at the same time, we had Cool Matt, who was helping the Koga by sniping people. And then to add into it, we had a Tyra with Skeppy, who just kept marking people. And Strix was hitting for like 2,200. I can only imagine how fast Koga would be able to melt people at that point. So that was interesting to see. That was awesome. The biggest things in the power rankings to me is how Warm Up and Game Over have both dropped to 15 and 16. Baldy Bunch and OTP have also dropped. YCTG rises, but that's only because the other teams drop below them. BrutalFissure slowly making it into the top 10, and they're slowly climbing up. I think they could, if they play well in week 3, they could potentially move past Zimmerframe and Cyclone as well. Maybe even Kirsty's Hands. We'll see. So if we look at the schedule here, this is the number 1 matchup for me coming into week 3. If you look there in the North American region on the bottom, Elevate versus Oni Channers. Warm up versus Game Over. That could care less who wins that. Honestly, I think Warm Up will beat Game Over. I think Game Over will beat Warm Up. They've both had roster issues, so I don't even know who will show up for them at this point. But I'm more concerned about Elevate versus Oni Channers. Reason is because they're both undefeated, 2-0 each side. They've both 2-0'd each of the other 2 teams. And Elevate went up against Oni Channers 1 time in qualifiers, and Oni Channers won. So Oni Channers has never lost to Elevate. So it'll be interesting to see who wins. Oni Channers now has Swiper. They didn't have Swiper when they beat Elevate in open qualifiers. So could picking up Swiper help them, or could it potentially hurt them? We'll just have to see, wait and find out. That is the biggest matchup for me in week 3. The second biggest matchup would have to be the Xbox NA matchup between Onslaught and Kirsty's Hands. They're also both undefeated, 2-0. Now, Kirsty's Hands did get taken to Game 3 by Happy Battle Cats, but I think Kirsty's Hands could potentially put up a fight against Onslaught. So Onslaught versus Kirsty's Hands would determine who's that first place team. If Kirsty's Hands beats them, Onslaught, will have to prepare for them in week 6, and Kirsty's Hands could potentially be your LAN frontrunner out of the Xbox NA region. The third biggest matchup is actually on the PS4 side of things again, and it's the EU Flashpoint versus BrutalFissure. Now, BrutalFissure is 1-1. They lost to Cyclone. They beat YCTG. Flashpoint beat Cyclone, and they beat YCTG. So they're 2-0, and they're clearly in first place. But I want to see if BrutalFissure can put up a fight against Flashpoint. They took Cyclone to 3 games. Can they take Flashpoint to 3 games? Can they score points on Flashpoint? I think Flashpoint has only lost 6 points in 4 games, or given up 6 points in 4 games, which is a very good mark. So I'd like to see if BrutalFissure can score points on them. I'd like to see if they can take them to a Game 3. BrutalFissure is a much better team than they were 2 weeks ago, and they're a much better team than they were 2 months ago. They no longer have Itik, but Alex Kidd has stepped up in the frontline role himself. Cultura Scred doesn't have as much pressure on him anymore, and Atomic AMK is clearly a fragger. So we'll just have to see what they're able to do against Flashpoint this week. And the biggest thing with that is Flashpoint plays a very spread out spread out offense. They play their lanes very, very well. And then with BrutalFissure, they like to stay together. They run as a group. They kind of don't like to stray away from each other as much. So it'll be interesting to see how Flashpoint and BrutalFissure's 2 different playstyles come together and who can come out on top with that. The reason why I mentioned that is because Flashpoint went up against YCTG, who had sort of a hybrid offense. They had that clumped together kind of feel, but they also had 1 or 2 guys that would, push on their own and flank on their own, no matter what damage champions they were at the time. And they didn't do it the whole game, though. They kind of would be off and on with it, and they were able to beat Flashpoint playing that playstyle. So it'd be interesting to see how BrutalFissure can do against Flashpoint in week 2. And then the fourth and final most important matchup to me would be Radiant versus Zimmerframe. And that's because that right there will determine who is the second best team in the Xbox EU. Clearly, both of those teams lost to Vex Gaming, so they're not at that point to contend with Vex yet. I thought either of them would be, but Zimmerframe getting 2-0'd and Radiant getting 2-0'd as well, not showing a lot of promise as of right now. So whoever wins that matchup between Radiant and Zimmerframe will be placed as the second best team in Xbox EU, and then they could clearly start getting ready to give a better fight against Vexed. And so for my predictions, real quick, I've got Zimmerframe beating Radiant. I've got Vex beating OTP. I've got Baldy Bunch beating Happy Battle Cats. Baldy Bunch was Vampire Lord. They changed their name to Baldy Bunch. So I got Baldy Bunch beating HBC. But I think that'll be a 3-game set as well. I think Vex will 2-0 OTP. I think Zimmerframe versus Radiant will be a 2-1 in favor of Zimmer. And for Onslaught versus Kirsty's Hands, I kind of want to say Kirsty's Hands. I kind of do. But I'm going to have to go with Onslaught. The Kirsty's Hands could potentially win this. I think if they go to 3 games and they stay away from hit scan maps such as Stonekeep or Jag Falls, I think Kirsty's Hands can come out on top. I'm going to go with Onslaught, though, because their roster's a little stronger in this meta at this moment. And when we go to PS4 side of things, I think Game Over will beat Warm Up. I think that'll be a 2-1 as well. And I think Flashpoint will beat BrutalFissure, but I just want to see how well BrutalFissure does against them. I think Cyclone will beat YCTG 2-0 as well. And then for the most important matchup to me this week, Elevate versus Oni Channers. This is the toughest decision to call. Elevate has the second least amount of deaths in the league. The team with the least amount of deaths is the Oni Channers. The team with the most kills between the two is Elevate. The team averaging the most kills is Oni Channers. The team with the highest KDA is Oni Channers, and the team with the highest individual players KDA is, of course, Emmett Payne on Elevate, who's only died once in his only 4 games this season. Elevate has played 4 games. Emmett Payne's only died once. He's got a 38.67 KD, and if you want to get even more technical with that stat, he died once in the first game, so he hasn't died at all in 3 games. Swiper is the leading fragger for Oni Channers. And the leading fragger for so we've got Swiper, who has 24 kills. He leads Oni Channers in kills. And then on the other side of things, Elevate, you've got 3 people who have more kills than him. Emmett Payne with 25, GR with 29, and then SJP with 30. If I had to choose who's going to win this matchup, I'd have to go with Oni Channers as of right now. I kind of want to pick Elevate because if Emmett doesn't die, if Payne doesn't die, then it'll be kind of hard for the Oni Channers to win the game. But at the same time, I think Oni Channers' lineup, besides Swiper, has been together longer. They have more chemistry together. And they haven't lost to Elevate. They're 1-0. So, I don't know. We'll have to see. So, yeah, that's it for today. Nice short 30-minute show. It's awesome. It was a little longer than 30. I think it was like 35. So, yeah, if you have any comments or questions, just let me know. This video will be on YouTube tonight, so yeah. Oh, so by the way, last thing. The two people on the podcast that gets put on YouTube tomorrow, they bet between the Kirsty's Hands and Onslaught game. One of them said Onslaught's going to win. The other one said Kirsty's Hands is going to win. And they bet $10 on it. So you guys will hear about that live. Or not live, but you'll hear about it on the podcast tomorrow. See you guys later.